All right, hi everyone, and welcome to this Learn with Google Hangout. I'm really excited to be with you here today. My name is Nicole Primo, and I'm a Partner Education Manager for the Google Shopping team. So today we have some great content for you. It's a really exciting time for our shopping team since we just globally rolled out new shopping campaigns. And what that means for you is a lot of great things in terms of easier campaign management for your product listing ads, some enhanced functionality, and we'll be going over all of that today. So before we do that, I just want to give you a few tips about using the Hangouts console for those of you who aren't familiar with it. First and foremost, you should see a Q&A widget on the right side of your screen. This is where you can type in any questions throughout the event as they come up, and we'll try to dedicate the last section of our Hangout to answering your questions. So definitely type them in. I'm eager to give you the information that you're looking for. On top of that, if you do want to tweet about today's webinar, today's Hangout, highly encourage you to do it and to add the hashtag shopping campaigns so we can start that discussion with you. And last but not least, we love your feedback and we really want to hear from you and what you're looking for in particular so that we can tailor our content. So there is a survey on the Google Plus event page, both in the description as well as it'll eventually be in those comments. So if you have to leave early, please do take a few moments to answer those quick questions and help us get you what you're looking for. I will also note that this Hangout is recorded, so at any time you'll be able to go back in and really watch sections that were important to you or share the link, the YouTube link, with your colleagues and anyone else who you think would find it useful. So without further ado, I'm going to dive into our content. Great, so here's what we'll be talking about today. First, we're going to cover Google Shopping as it exists today, and then we'll transition into what is a shopping campaign. Lastly, we'll cover the rollout of the new shopping campaigns and give you some tips to get started and get off on the right foot. So there'll be time for Q&A like I mentioned, so at any point, please do submit those questions as they come up. So for those of you who have attended past webinars, you've probably heard me tell you this story, but it's an important one, so stick with me for just a few moments as I go through it quickly one more time. So the fact is that the world we live in today enables us to be constantly connected. And with the increased adoption of mobile devices, we find ourselves checking our tablets and phones, for instance, while we walk down the street, during our lunch breaks, and even between commercials while we sit on the couch. And with this digital technology, we're connected to information at any time and from anywhere. And a driving force in our ability to find the information we're looking for is search technology. So with almost 6 billion searches globally every single day, there's no shortage of consumers who are using the internet to enhance their shopping experiences, both online and offline. So this multi-screen search-driven behavior means we get to compare prices online, visit a nearby store, and ultimately find the product that matches all of our shopping criteria, like where and when I can actually get the physical product, where it's within my desired price range, and what is the specific make and model that has all of the features I'm looking for. So given what shoppers are doing and the access they now expect to have with Google Shopping, we at Google want to provide a seamless shopping experience for consumers, whether they're at home on their phone looking for stuffed animals for a niece's birthday, or whether they're waiting in the bus browsing for cameras for their business, or even in between meetings on a tablet browsing for shoes for an upcoming party. And so again, we've been really busy doing a lot to continuously improve the Google Shopping experience, and the result has been pretty notable growth. So there are now 1 billion or more than 1 billion products globally in Google Shopping, and we've seen phenomenal click growth year over year. In addition, we've branched out internationally, and we're now live in 23 countries globally. So according to ComScore, 40% of this year's US sales are likely to happen during the holiday shopping season. So, you can see that this is a huge opportunity with Google Shopping. So retailers are finding success. That's part of the current experience. So they're telling us that they're seeing good results with connecting their products with people who are shopping for them currently. Specifically, it helps them engage with customers who are highly relevant and in the mood to purchase. That said, we also recognize that there's an opportunity to make things better. We hear loud and clear from retailers of all sizes that Google Shopping just isn't intuitive. Managing product data in Merchant Center isn't simple, and managing product listing ads in AdWords can actually be confusing. We've also heard that even after you've gotten your campaign up and running, it can be hard to maintain and optimize. You're not sure if your campaign is set up correctly, how to increase your incoming traffic, or even how to track and manage what you currently have live. So here's what we're thinking about. We realize that at the end of the day, retailers think in terms of their inventory. They react quickly to change, and they optimize things based on inventory levels, customer trends, and other factors that determine how their products will sell. So, wouldn't it be nice if you could manage your campaign in the same way that you manage your store? And this is the reason that we've come up with shopping campaigns. We hear your feedback, and we're excited to share a better way to manage your product listing ads. So, hopefully I've gotten you excited about the idea, given you a little bit of a teaser about what we're thinking about. So now let's actually walk through and talk through what a shopping campaign is. So there are three main components of a shopping campaign. It offers that retail-centric way of managing your product listing ads, a robust reporting interface so you can easily analyze your performance, and competitive landscape data so you know how to identify opportunities to optimize your campaign. So let's go into each of these. So with retail-centric campaign management, shopping campaigns have streamlined how you manage and bid on your product inventory. So for example, you can browse your data feed directly in AdWords and select the products you want to bid on more specifically or more granularly. Also, you don't have to worry about overlapping products or orchestrating that lowest bid for your all products target because of this integration. So when you subdivide your product groups, a catch-all group for you for everything else in your inventory is automatically created. So we're making sure that all of your products are covered in your campaign by default. The second pillar of a shopping campaign is the advanced reporting, where you can view your performance by product attributes like brand, product type, and even individual product ID. So regardless of how you set up your product targeting, you can analyze and export your campaign performance, slicing and dicing it however will be most helpful for your business. And it's really easy to access all of this information in the Dimensions tab. So last but certainly not least, in response to the many advertisers who previously weren't sure how to improve their traffic in product listing ads, shopping campaigns now provides benchmark data like max cost per click bids and benchmark click-through rates. So in addition, you'll find helpful tools like impression share so you know how much more opportunity is out there for your products. And you'll find a bid simulator to help you understand how adjusting your bids might impact your performance. So we've covered the three key benefits, and hopefully that anticipation and excitement about shopping campaigns is just growing. So without further ado, I'm going to shift to how you can get started and use shopping campaigns in your day-to-day. So the good news is creating a shopping campaign is really straightforward. There's three basic steps that we'll walk through. So first, hopefully this looks familiar. What you'll do is create a new campaign and select shopping from that drop-down menu. Next, you'll follow the on-screen instructions to customize the settings for your new campaign. So an important step in this process is setting your default bid and the budget for your campaign. So if you're not totally sure about what levels you want to set these settings at, don't worry, your bid and budget can always be changed at any time. And finally, all you'll have to do is pause your regular PLA campaign. So by pausing your regular campaign, you're ensuring that you avoid having two campaigns running at the same time, so your regular PLA campaign and your new shopping campaign. And that's actually it. It's a really simple way to get started. Over time, your data will populate as your performance grows, and so you can start analyzing and optimizing that traffic. Okay, so you're probably thinking that a three-step process is too good to be true. And while that three-step process is actually all that's required to get started, you're right that most retailers need to take a few more steps to really get the most out of their product advertising. So specifically, most retailers want to bid differently for different groups of products, which means they need to subdivide or break out what are called product groups. So product groups allow you to organize your inventory into collections that can be multiple products or even an individual single item. With these groups, they allow you to specify different bids across the different groups that correlate to those groups' value. So this is very similar to product targets for those of you who are familiar with regular PLA campaigns. The main benefit and difference of the new product group concept is that it's easier to create because your data feed auto-populates possible group values in the AdWords interface. So no more trying to manually match the attribute values from your data feed to your targets. Instead, groups give you an easy way to organize your inventory. So instead of having me talk about it, I'm going to walk you through an example. So when you complete that three-step process that we just talked through, you'll end up with a new shopping campaign that looks something like this. Notice that it only has that all products target and that the bid you specified in the settings process is applied to that target. So that default bid that this store set of 40 cents is automatically applied to the all products target. So when you're ready to subdivide the all products target into those more specific product groups, you'll click the plus button and you'll get a new window where you'll actually choose how you want to subdivide. So in this window, you'll have 6 main options for how you'll start subdividing: category or Google product category in your feed, brand, ID, condition for those of you who have large used or refurbished inventory, product type, and one of your custom labels. Once you choose how you'll start subdividing, in this case they chose category, you can now select which values you want to break out. So notice that these values you're seeing in that left panel are automatically pulled from the Google product category attribute in your data feed. So this will look different for every single retailer because, again, it's custom pulled from their data feed. So let's say this is a store called Acme Superstore. They may choose to break out only their apparel and electronics categories for now, since they're really high margin and really high volume categories. To do this, they'd simply click that arrow to select the categories. They'd then be added to that right panel as you see here, and then they click Save. So now you can see that their campaign is broken out into those 3 main categories. We have apparel and electronics, which they just selected and specified bids in the max CPC column. And then we have that everything else. So that everything else is automatically created for you once you start subdividing your all products target. Essentially, everything else acts as a catch-all for the rest of the inventory that you don't necessarily have the time or have the desire to manually manage more specifically. So they broke out their two important categories. Everything else falls into that everything else category with that 50-cent bid. So obviously apparel is a huge category and covers a lot of different types of products with a lot of different margins. So if Acme Superstore wants to subdivide further, they absolutely can. In fact, they can subdivide up to 5 additional times. So they'd follow a similar process to select how they'll subdivide, starting with that plus button. Okay, so once Acme Superstore is done breaking out their category, you can see that they now have more specificity in terms of how they can promote and bid on their products. So they've chosen here, you can see, to actually exclude the costumes category. It's not exactly the right time of year for costumes, so they don't see a reason to bid on it. By excluding it, they simply don't bid on it. They won't be eligible to show the products in the costumes category as product listing ads. You can also see that they've associated bids at each level of subdivision. So for the jewelry products group, they have a $1.25 bid, presumably because they make more money off of jewelry, whereas for that everything else in their apparels and accessories category, they've lowered the bid down to 30 cents, presumably because on average, everything else isn't super important to their business. So we just talked about how to create a shopping campaign. In this next section, we'll touch on a few more advanced topics. So these topics are geared more towards intermediate advertisers who already have existing regular PLA campaigns. For a lot of this stuff, we're assuming you have a certain base of knowledge. So if at any point it gets too complex or there's terms you don't understand, definitely check out our library of past webinars since we cover all of this in more detail. So let's get into it. So as I mentioned, I hope you're really excited to, and ready to start upgrading your PLAs and creating those shopping campaigns. That said, it is definitely worthwhile to take a step back and review your existing campaigns to identify what's working and what's not. So you want to do this before you create your campaign so that you don't spend time creating this new campaign and then finding out that it's not really according to the things that are working for you. So there are a few feature improvements in shopping campaigns that hopefully allow you to streamline your regular PLA campaign structure when you upgrade. So for example, products no longer overlap and they no longer can live in multiple product targets. So whereas previously you might have had to get a little bit creative to make sure you weren't bidding on the same product in multiple product targets, with shopping campaigns, that's not a concern. So as we mentioned earlier, there's an everything else product group that automatically gets created. And again, this makes sure that you're only bidding once per campaign on a given item. Another example of how shopping campaigns help you streamline is that you don't have to create item-level product targets for item-level reporting. So in regular PLA campaigns, if you wanted to get performance data on a particular item, you had to break out that item into its own product target. That's not the case in shopping campaigns. As a standard feature, no matter how you target your inventory, you'll be able to slice and dice performance data on a variety of levels, basically at every single attribute, including item ID. So we do recommend that you analyze your historical performance to see how granular you need to actually get in the shopping campaign. So you may find that breaking out products doesn't make that much of a difference. So after a certain point, getting too specific may not actually help you boost your ROI. Or you may find that separating your best sellers really does improve conversions, so you want to keep that best practice going forward into your new campaign. Ultimately, at the end of the day, every business and every team is unique. So get more granular if it improves your return on ad spend. Or alternatively, maybe you minimize the time required to manage your campaign by focusing only on the highest value segment of your inventory and then making the most of your resources to really optimize that segment. So take some time to consider these factors and do what makes most sense for your business. So once you've thought through how you'd like to subdivide your inventory, it's important to revisit your data feed. Shopping campaigns still rely on data feeds to serve product listing ads, so you'll need to ensure that your product information is user-friendly, accurate, and up-to-date. So because you can browse and report on your products with different product attributes, it's more important than ever, really, to ensure that your data feed is clean and accurate. So one attribute in particular that many advertisers use to start subdividing their inventory is product type. So it's typically a really efficient way to group products according to their margins or value because similar product categories by nature have similar pricing structures. So as you may already know from working with regular PLA campaigns, product type allows you to use your own product catalog or taxonomy to subdivide, bid, and report on your products. So here you can see a few examples of how you might use product type to your advantage depending on your business type. So instead of Acme Superstore, let's say this is Acme Bike Shop, which some of you may have heard of before. You can see that they've included category information to ensure that all of their models are easy to group. So for instance, road bikes are obviously a lot more expensive than kind of an average cruiser, so it makes sense to group them differently. Some retailers also find it useful to include gender in their categorization. We typically see this like with apparel clients, but that gender allows them to specify, for instance, if women sell better at a certain time of year, or if they just sell better or differently, they can then group those products easily according to the variables that influence volume and margins. So others will include some kind of year or season information. So you can imagine that in businesses that have new models coming out, the most current model is obviously going to sell at a higher rate and for a higher price. So it's important to be able to identify and isolate those variables that influence sales once again. And finally, in some cases where size is important, you can include that information in your product type to be able to easily group and target higher or best-selling sizes. So one final tip here is to be sure to use that caret or arrow symbol that you see to divide the levels of your categorization structure. And then it's also important to include a space on both sides. This ensures that the Google system understands that these are different levels of categorization. And speaking of levels of categorization, since you can subdivide up to 5 times in your AdWords account, you're allowed up to 5 different categorization levels. That said, if that seems like too much for your products, again, I recommend prioritizing your resources and focusing most heavily on figuring out a good structure for the top 2 to 3 levels and providing as much specific grouping opportunity that makes sense for your business as possible. So another product attribute that may be important for you is custom labels. Custom labels are a new structured way to essentially tag your products in your data feed. So the case study, or the use case here rather, is if the core targetable attributes like Google product category, product type, brand, condition, and item ID, if those don't allow you to group products the way you want to, you can add custom labels to your product feed and tag the products the way you'd like to group them. So to get started with labels, I recommend you take a step back and map out 5 label definitions and possible values. So what I mean by this is kind of what you see in the example here. So back to Acme Superstore, they want to be able to group products based on the 5 categories you see here, and these are pretty typical. A lot of retailers find these helpful. So specifically seasonality, as well as maybe margins or selling rate, so like bestseller. Basically, they assign a definition to each of the 5 possible custom labels and map out the values that will fall into that label. So here's what Acme Superstore's custom labels would look like in their feed. Notice that the value they want to be able to group products by, for instance bestseller, are in the same label number and column. This is absolutely essential to being able to group products by label. So I'll just repeat the point one more time. So make sure that any products you want to group by label have the same label in the same label attribute. For instance, bestseller is always going to fall in custom label 2. As a final note, you may be thinking that custom labels sound pretty familiar to regular PLA campaign attributes, AdWords labels, and AdWords grouping. So they definitely are similar in concept and they address a similar need, but AdWords labels and AdWords groupings work differently than custom labels, and therefore AdWords labels and AdWords grouping will not be recognized in shopping campaigns. So if you want to use that kind of tagging system, you'll need to add custom labels to your data feed. If you do decide to add custom labels, make sure you do not remove AdWords labels and AdWords grouping because they can be used for other formats like regular PLA campaigns as well as other ads entirely like dynamic remarketing. So another thing to consider are your management and tracking options in shopping campaigns. So we're really excited to announce that the Shopping Content API was launched yesterday, so March 5th. So definitely check out developer documents to make sure that your API is upgraded for shopping campaigns. Also, in AdWords, we're incorporating a lot of the bulk editing opportunities in the interface itself. So make sure when you're playing around, you look for those opportunities to bulk edit your bids and destination URLs directly in the interface. In terms of tracking, there are 2 ways that tracking is the same. So if you're currently tracking your PLAs with destination URL in the link attribute, no changes needed. You can keep that exactly as it is, and it will continue to track in shopping campaigns. Same thing goes if you're using the AdWords redirect attribute to track. Again, no change needed. 2 places where you may need to upgrade or at least kind of talk about upgrading is if you're using a third-party platform or provider, you'll need to talk to them to make sure that their tracking option is compatible with shopping campaigns. And same thing with API. You'll need to update your API in order to track properly for shopping campaigns. Okay, so as mentioned earlier, one of those key benefits for shopping campaigns is the competitive landscape data. So we've heard advertisers ask for more insightful metrics that help them make an impact on their campaigns. So this includes ways for them to find a good bid from the very start, ways for them to understand how their performance compares with their competitors, and also ways for them to grow their overall share of traffic. So with benchmark data, impression share, and the bid simulator that will launch soon, you have metrics and tools that can help you effectively manage and optimize your PLA traffic. So for instance, you'll be able to, like you see here, find opportunities to adjust your bids by comparing your bid and CTR against benchmarks. Another way to do this, if your click-through rate is low compared to the benchmark, it's a great time to look back at the quality of your data. Usually when we see low click-through rates, it's because titles are not super user-friendly or aren't totally descriptive of the product, or images simply aren't up to quality of the other peers. So look at click-through rates, use it to inform how you optimize your data feed, as well as how you optimize your bids. Okay, so we've made it to our summary, which means we're nearing the end. If you have any burning questions, please do enter those. I'll be looking at those next, and that's what we'll get into after we do a quick review. So first thing you should do is review what's working and what's not in your regular PLA campaign. Think about some of the items we talked about. What makes most sense for your business and your resources? For instance, if you don't have a lot of time to spend, maybe you only prioritize that highest segment of products. If you do have more resources, maybe you get more specific and you break out the most important products more granularly. Next, revisit the attributes that are used to create product groups, like your product type. Is your product type going to allow you to group products in a way that makes sense for margins and for sales volumes? Like we saw road bikes versus cruisers, those are essential to be able to break out easily. Or maybe you have other factors like gender or release year. Really important to take the time to make sure your product taxonomy matches how you'll want to actually group your products in AdWords. Similarly, if you don't have attributes that are easy to group your products, maybe you need to come up with a custom label strategy. Take the time to map out and define the 5 different labels you'll use, and then make sure that the values line up so that you can target with, for instance, custom label 2, your best sellers. So ensure you're able to manage and track your campaign. Find out what you need in order to be able to do this at scale, and think about what's changing and what's not for shopping campaigns so you can make sure that your management and tracking systems are compatible. Optimize with competitive metrics. So use those metrics once your campaign gets rolling to improve and grow your campaign. Use that benchmark data, look at your impression share, play around with the bid simulator. There's a lot of new opportunity here, so it's going to take some kind of exploration on your end to see what are the new methods of optimization available to you and how will you use the information to make the most out of your product advertising. And so we wanted to leave you with a few resources. So I'm going to leave this slide up while I start to look at your questions. So again, do answer those questions. If you can't, don't answer the questions. I'll take care of that. Do submit those questions. And if you can't stick around for my answers, then definitely please take that survey. And also bookmark these resources. They're super helpful and should help you get off on the right foot. Okay, great. So I think we can start, and we can start. There's a couple of questions about API, and I just want to correct something that I said. I said the Content API was launching, and it's actually just the AdWords API that launched yesterday. So our first question was actually, when will Shopping API be available? And again, that AdWords API is currently available, having launched yesterday. The next question along these lines is there a way to make bid changes in bulk? Currently, the process is time-consuming to alter bids for individual items. So again, there's a couple of options here. Obviously, API may be an option for you, but if you don't have the coding or technical resources to support a custom API integration, an additional option is that we've actually included bulk editing features. in the shopping campaigns interface. So you'll be able to bulk edit your bids right from AdWords, which is a great new feature of shopping campaigns. So another question is, I just started a shopping campaign this Monday and started running it with our regular PLA campaign, but bidding slightly less. So the question is it a good idea to run regular PLA campaigns and shopping campaigns at the same time? So this can be either a simple or a complicated answer depending on how you look at it. So I'll give you the simple answer first. Simply put, it's probably a best practice to pause your regular PLA campaign and just let that new shopping campaign take over. It starts running fairly quickly, so you don't have to worry about there being a lag in time to kind of ramp up that campaign. So if you can, if it's possible, try to pause your regular PLA campaign and only use that shopping campaign. So I know that for some of you who have several hundred or several thousand current product targets in your regular PLA campaign, it may not be possible to switch over right away. So if it's not possible to pause your entire regular PLA campaign because you're still relying on some of the targets while you upgrade to shopping campaigns, you can use what's called campaign priority settings. So this is new to shopping campaigns, and it's in the campaign settings tab. But what it allows you to do is set a high priority for the campaign, so Google knows to essentially prefer the bids that are used in your shopping campaign. So in this case, what you'd want to do is you'd want to exclude the all products target so that you're only targeting a subset in your shopping campaigns. Set that setting to high so that we know to use the bid on the items that you've already upgraded, and then everything else that's already in your regular PLA campaign will continue to run. So you can also do that with pausing if they map directly. So if, for instance, brand equals XYZ in your regular PLA campaign and you're ready to upgrade that to shopping campaigns, you can simply pause the existing in the regular. If that's not possible, that's when shopping campaign priority settings would come in. So like I said, there's a simple answer, which is ideally you pause regular and use shopping campaigns. If that's not possible, there are a couple other options. Okay, so another question around kind of these priority settings. So the question is there an impact on my PLA campaign when other advertisers have shopping campaigns in their AdWords accounts? So I think the question is getting at, is there a preference given to targets in the shopping campaign over regular PLA campaigns? And the answer is there's no preference. This is simply an interface change. This is a new way of actually managing your targeting. It's not actually changing how the targets happen on the back end. So whether you're using regular PLA campaigns or you've upgraded to shopping campaigns, the difference will be what you are able to do in the interface and how you're able to report on your products. There's no preference given to one over the other. Second part of this question is, do they get more impressions because they have a high priority? So again, the priority doesn't do anything other than tell Google which bids you want to use. So to clarify, I mentioned that it's impossible to put two bids on one item in a shopping campaign. You just can't do it. That said, let's say you have two campaigns. One of them is your seasonal campaign. You want to allocate a really large budget to a select set of items. So you could bid on those items in your seasonal campaign. You could also bid on those items in your regular campaign that you always use. So what priority does is it tells Google which bid you want to use. So if you have a high priority campaign, we know that you want to use the bids in that campaign over the medium or low priority campaign. So it has nothing to do with ad serving, and I know it can be a little confusing. Priority is simply to specify, if I have two bids for a single item in multiple campaigns, which bid should Google use? So here's a question about, what if I want to target more specific products only? For instance, TVs. So again, the beauty of shopping campaigns is that it allows you to subdivide as much or as little as you want. You automatically get that all products target when you follow the 3 basic steps. And then as you saw in that kind of that pop-out window that happens when you click the plus button, you can choose just electronics, or you can choose just apparel to break out. You don't have to break out more granular than you want, and that's what we're encouraging you to think about. You may have limited resources and you really only want to focus on a handful of products or a handful of groups. Absolutely feel free to do that. You can simply just select those items and then leave everything else in that everything else category. Okay, another question about subdivision. Can we subdivide down to the product level in order to support product level bidding? Absolutely. You can, as I mentioned, again, when you click the plus button and get that pop-out window, one of the menu options in that drop-down is ID. So if you wanted to just, let's say you wanted to have kind of everything else and you wanted to just target like your 5 best-selling products with really aggressive bids, you'd simply choose ID, select the IDs that you want to specifically bid on, and then leave everything else in that everything else category. So again, ID level bidding is absolutely supported. The only note I have here is that it's not required to get ID level reporting. So even if you only have an all products target, in your dimensions tab, you can see how every single item in your campaign is performing. So no matter how you target, ID or not, you can see that ID level performance. A question about, why is there no conversion data? So in the screenshots we used for the sake of showing you a couple examples, conversion data wasn't enabled. But if you do have conversion tracking enabled, you definitely can add those columns to your interface, just like you can with all other AdWords products. So can we specify product categorization, or does it have to be by Google product category and Google's taxonomy? So it's an important distinction. You have 2 options for product categorization. One is product type. Product type is totally customizable by you. You can do anything you want with it, like with that example of Acme Bikes, how they had like women's and road bike versus cruisers. You can set up that taxonomy however makes sense for your business and how you'd like to group products. On the other hand, you have category or Google product category. So this is an attribute that has specific possible values, which means Google has a taxonomy, has a categorization system that we use to categorize products. So in Google product category, you have to use our taxonomy. In product type, you can use whatever makes sense for you, totally customizable by you. Another great question about IDs. So is there a way to exclude specific items by ID from product listing ads without having to remove it from the feed? So this is that example I showed you with the exclusions at the category level. You may remember they didn't want to target costumes because it's not exactly the right time of year, so they excluded it. You can do this at the ID level, the brand level, the category level, the product type level, or the custom label level. So let's say you have just 1 or 2 product IDs that you want to exclude. Maybe you would just add those in that the plus pop-out menu that I keep mentioning. You might just add those IDs so that you can exclude them. Let's say there's 100 or 10 or whatever, there's a larger group. Maybe you would add a label, and then you could just exclude that label. So for instance, maybe custom label 0 would be exclusion, and then you would target the custom label 0 exclusion, and you would exclude that exclusion label. I know that's a little redundant, but I hope you see the idea, which is if there's just a handful of IDs, add them individually, exclude each of them, or if there's a larger set, use a label to exclude the entire label. So how many categories can one shopping campaign be subdivided into? So the magic number is 5. So you think about it this way, there are 5 custom labels, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So 5 custom labels. You can do 5 levels of product type. So for instance, bikes, cruisers, women's, 2013, and then a size. So 5 levels of product type, 5 labels, 5 levels of total subdivision opportunity. Okay, so next question is, when starting a new shopping campaign, what is the optimal level of specificity? Would you recommend starting broader, or would you recommend starting more specifically to start? So this is going to depend on retailer, and it gets down to your resources, kind of like we talked about before. So you can get as specific or as granular or as specific or as broad as you want and as makes sense for your business. If it were me and it were my business, I would start by kind of stepping away from AdWords, stepping away from product listing ads, and I would take a look at my books. And I would look at what are the products that drive the most revenue for me overall throughout the year. I would also look at, are there seasonalities? So are there products that in certain seasons or around certain holidays drive huge revenue for me? That's where I would start. I would prioritize my best overall revenue generators and break those out with higher bids. Then I would, again, with seasonality, I'd break those out so that when the season came, I could easily boost the bids and make sure that they were aggressive in those times of year. So again, it's going to depend on your product inventory, but as a general rule, try to step away from the targeting and actually just do it based on how you would manage your inventory and how you want to promote your products all year long as well as seasonally. I know that's not a super satisfying answer, but there really is no one-size-fits-all with this. It really depends on your business, and it's up to you to create a strategy for promoting your products at the right time. And actually, along those lines, I would recommend, if you're still frustrated by it or you really don't like my answer, take a look at our video library, and maybe we can post links to them as well. But our 101 and 201 webinars they go really in depth into kind of this categorization and segmentation, what you should be thinking about. So they are for product listing ads, kind of the regular PLA campaigns, but the principles still apply. So if you really want to kind of dive into that topic deeper, maybe take a look at the 101, but specifically the 201 webinar that we did last year. Great question about feed optimization. Okay, so how do I optimize my feed to generate as many impressions as possible when my products are relevant? So this we get into a lot in the 301 webinar, I believe, but there are 3 main attributes that I'd recommend you take a look at. Number 1 is title. Number 2 is Google product category. And number 3 is unique product identifier. So with your title, you want to be as descriptive and keyword rich as possible. So when I say keyword rich, I mean think about how people are searching for your products. Make sure you include the key phrases that they search for in your title. That's going to make sure that you show when people are searching those keyword phrases. You also want to be user-friendly. You want to be, human language, not trying to trick the computer or anything like that, but keyword-rich titles that make sense for how people are searching for your products. Number 2, I think, was Google product category. Google product category is a great way to tell Google in our own language more about your product. So your product type is custom to you, but think about it. It's going to be different for every single retailer. Google product category, on the other hand, is something that we've developed. Google understands the categorization, and it understands what it means for your products and how they match to search queries. So be as specific as possible when using Google product category, and make sure that you go down as deep into the taxonomy as possible for each product. The third, and I would say maybe the most important thing you can do, is use correct unique product identifiers for every single item. It's a big job, I know, but unique product identifiers are those manufacturer part numbers, those MPNs, as well as like UPIs, so UPCs, universal product codes, as well as like ISBNs for books and media. What these identifiers do is they give Google an understanding of these 5 retailers sell this same product. So their titles are different, their descriptions are different, but every single one of those 5 products is the same thing. And so on the back end, we can then understand when does that product work best in terms of search query results. So I'll just recap again. Make your titles user-friendly and keyword-rich. Be as specific as possible with Google product category, and submit correct unique product identifiers. So can you explain why medium priority exists? It's a good question. So medium priority is essentially saying that a campaign is standard priority. Typically, and that's I think what it reverts to by default. So typically what you're going to only be using if you choose to adjust the priority is setting it to high priority so that we know to prefer the bids. So I think it's just a way of kind of completing the circle, having low, medium, and high. High being use these bids, low being don't use these bids for the most part, and medium kind of being the default of just normal priority. So a question came up, so how long will former or regular PLA campaigns be supported? So we see that customers are seeing great results with shopping campaigns. They love the retail-centric way of creating product groups and bidding on their inventory. The competitive metrics are really useful for long-term optimization and getting the most out of your campaigns. And we're launching features like bulk editing and API so that you can scale your campaign management quickly and easily. So we strongly recommend that you see what shopping campaigns has to offer and start exploring that option. We have a question about when will average position be reported on for shopping campaigns? So average position is, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, it's a way that other ad formats tell you where you're showing. So in the case of like text ads, for instance, those that show on the Google search results page, you can see that there's a huge difference if you're number 1 on the top or if you're number 11 on the bottom of the page. Huge difference in performance. So average position is an important metric for understanding kind of how you can expect your performance to be based on your position. With shopping or with product listing ads, everything is in that little box. So it's always like 5 or so different products in a box. So average position is not as much an indicator of click-through rates as it is between like 1 and 11 on the page. So average position, I would say, personally in my opinion, is not the right metric to focus on for shopping campaigns. And so if you look at things like competitive metrics like click-through rates, you're going to see that's going to be much more indicative of if your click-through rate is low, you need to look at your titles, your price competitiveness, and your images, because click-through rates for product listing ads are much, much more correlated to those factors than they are where you are in amongst the 5 in the box. Strong images speak volumes to customers. Titles that are descriptive and shopper friendly, that's obvious. And then, of course, price. Think about yourself as a consumer. Those are the things that you should be focused on for optimizing click-through rates, more so than average position. So will there be more custom labels? So as you know, you can submit up to 5 values for a given product using 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Since there are these 5 labels, we recommend seeing how you can make the most of them, and seeing if there are really kind of 5 key attributes or ways that you want to group. Given that you can still group on brand, product type, etc., those 5 labels should be your starting point for kind of thinking about and organizing a labeling system. Okay, I'm going to take about one more question. So here's a question. It's less of a question, more of a statement that I totally empathize with, and it's that I just want to know how to safely convert to a new shopping campaign from a former or regular PLA campaign. We have a huge, really well-developed PLA campaign, so I'm nervous. Totally hear that. Definitely empathize with it. So in order to effectively and kind of safely, as he put it, migrate that or upgrade that campaign to a shopping campaign, I recommend that you first step back, step away from the AdWords account, and just kind of think about your inventory. Think about if you had the opportunity to do it all over again, would you do it the same way or would you do it differently? Once you kind of get a gut check on that, then dive into your regular PLA campaign and see what's working. Maybe you have targets that are too specific and really don't help your ROI because they just don't get enough traffic, or they're just not worth managing separately. Maybe there are targets that are doing really, really well, and you want to continue targeting those in your shopping campaign. And then just start those subdivisions. You've seen how easy it is. Take the time to kind of break it out, break it down, start upgrading some of those targets, and then either use shopping campaign priority settings to set a high priority for the new one, or kind of try to map directly and pause, brand equals XYZ when you upgrade brand equals XYZ. So I hear you, but if you do kind of do your due diligence and you take deliberate steps to make sure you're upgrading the most important parts of your regular PLA campaign, you'll be just fine, and then you'll have all that added benefit of the competitive data, the slicing and dicing of performance metrics, and a lot of enhanced functionality. So I hear you. Take the time to do it right, and I almost am certain that it will be a better experience in the long run. Great. So I think that wraps it up for the most part. Again, we had a ton of questions, so we really, really appreciate all of your great enthusiasm, and we hope you'll take a moment just to take that quick survey. Feedback for me, feedback for our team about what we can do to get you more information that you're looking for. That's what our goal is here. So thank you so much for spending the last hour with me, and I look forward to seeing you in future Hangouts.